Welcome back. Thanks for staying with Mirror. Now, this is the other big story that we are tracking this evening. The Delhi High Court has issued a warning to all hotels and restaurants, asking them to not use its interim stay on service charge to mislead people. The court was hearing a plea filed by the Hotel and Restaurant Commission challenging the ban on service charge. The court said a stay does not mean that service charge has been approved. These observations came after the Additional Solicitor General informed the court that some restaurants are misinterpreting the court order. Further, the court also asked hotels and restaurants whether they will be okay if the term service charge is replaced by terms like staff welfare fund or the staff welfare contribution or staff charges. Now, if you have been fleeced by restaurants or hotels in the High Court's name, do call us on the number that is flashing on your screens right now. In fact, if you have any doubts about the legality of service charge, now is the time to get the answers. But first, let's go across to Ishika from Delhi and Shweta from Mumbai, who are joining us. Ishika, I'm coming to you first. You're joining us from a place where I believe there are a lot of hotel and restaurant goers. What are they telling you about service charge? You know, sometimes we take out our cards and we just swipe whatever amount that the restaurant asks us for without realizing that there is a part of that bill we don't really need to pay.
Well, exactly, Shreya. As you mentioned, many a times we just see the bill and we just pay it to them, not realizing that we are also paying the service charge that is not at all mandatory for us to pay. Right now, I'm present at the Connaught Place. You can clearly see, in fact, many restaurants that are present just here. And I have some consumers also with me. I'll go across to them. Today, the Delhi High Court has said, ask the restaurants to not, in fact, mislead the people thinking that service charge has been approved by the court. What is, your response on that?
See, they should not charge service charge to us, first of all. They actually make us feel like that it is mandatory to pay, which is actually not. Our parents, those who are not aware of it, they end up paying the service charge, which should be like the court or someone should tell the restaurants and other those who are handling, those who are charging service charge, they should tell them clearly that this is not mandatory and we should not end up paying more. It's our choice. If we are happy with it, we should pay. If we are not, then we can tell them to waive it off.
So, as she said, it should be our choice. If we want to pay, we will pay. But that is definitely not a practice that the restaurants have been following. We see, they put it near the tax bracket. And then if you don't see it, you don't even realize you're actually paying for it.
I think it should be a tip service kind of a thing. Like if customers enjoys the service of that restaurant and they're willing to pay for it, they should pay for it. Otherwise, it should not be mandatory. I feel so.
So you think that today Delhi High Court, by telling this to the restaurants to not, in fact, mislead people, today finally has taken a stand for the consumers that they were long waiting for?
I think yes.
I think our government should educate our customers, because many of us don't know. So, government should do something, some initiative, something they can add into the curriculum, that what we need to pay and what we need not.
Do you think they are also using this, restaurants as a method for looting?
Yes, of course. Why not? Yes, they are. They are charging heavy amount.
I think customers should also be aware. Yes. Yeah. They should increase their awareness that what actually they are paying for. Yeah.
So, Shreya, in fact, as you heard, the consumers here, what they are saying here is that, first of all, the consumers need to be aware, because in 99% of the cases, consumers are not aware that they are paying for something that they are not obliged to. And definitely, the government also need to keep a check on this, because restaurants, they are using it as a method of looting people. Over to you.
Okay. And Shweta, I think one of the challenges also is when you use the term service fee or service charge, it sounds like it is a charge that is mandated by the government of India.
Well, absolutely, Shreya. In fact, this is the confusion, and hence the High Court of Delhi has reprimanded the bodies of restaurant not to misinterpret for the consumers. Let me quickly cut across to few of the consumers, those who are here. So, good evening. A very quick question to you. Now, Delhi High Court has observed that few restaurant bodies are in fact misusing service charge as like this is mandatory for you all to pay. How do you see this?
नहीं, हमको लगता है कि वो जो चार्ज है वो नहीं लेना चाहिए, क्योंकि 10 to 20% होटल्स मतलब चार्ज कर रहे हैं, तो हम लोग टिप दे रहे हैं, फिर ऊपर से होटल्स चार्ज कर रहे हैं, तो हम लोग ये चाहते हैं कि ये नहीं होना चाहिए।
राइट और इस पे अभी हमने देखा कि दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट ने फटकार लगाई है। आपको लगता है अब जो रेस्टोरेंट बॉडीज हैं वो थोड़ा समझेंगी और कंज्यूमर्स को थोड़ा प्रोटेक्शन मिलने वाला है?
अभी कैसा है कि होना चाहिए, ये बात तो सही होना चाहिए, लेकिन अभी जैसा गवर्नमेंट डिसाइड करेगा वैसा
गवर्नमेंट और उसके ऊपर कौन डिसाइड करेगा, मतलब जो लोकल अथॉरिटीज़ है उन्होंने वो चीज़ को डिसाइड करना चाहिए, क्योंकि जब हाई कोर्ट उसको डिनाई मतलब ये कर रहे हैं तो फिर नीचे जो गवर्नमेंट
there should be yes absolutely as the consumers here Shreya are correctly pointing out that there should be some sort of consumer guidelines and protection from these kind of service charges which has been portrayed to them as if this is mandatory for them to pay as this is being going to government or so.
Okay, Shweta, thank you very much. I can go to my first caller, Arun, calling us from Mumbai. And before I go to Arun, I just want to introduce our guest. Professor Sri Ram Khanna is the managing editor of Consumer Voice. He is joining us on the broadcast. And Kishore Subramanian is founder of the Shree Consultants. He is joining us on the broadcast. Gentlemen, I'll come to you. But first to Arun. Arun, it's over to you. What do you want to say?
My point is, while this debate is okay, like, whether service charge should be removed from the bill and all. Yeah. See, what I'm trying to say is the debate on whether service charge should be charged or not, all that is fine. But what would you do if restaurants, in order to, preserve their margin, they inflate the menu rates? While in Mumbai, I've seen many a times people have removed the service charge. But how would you control the menu rates not getting changed? They would inflate that, right? So there should be some mechanism. It's a big ask.
Arun, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's a big ask, but there should be
that's a good point you make. That's a big point good point you make. Professor Sri Ram Khanna, Arun is making a good point, but I want to come to you with this. Fact is it the consumer, the consumer court's ruling was very clear that service charge cannot be put on your bill automatically. But that order was stayed by the Delhi High Court. Is it the Delhi High Court that is creating the confusion then? By now saying, oh, don't misread what we have said. We do not approve of service charge just because we have, put a stay on the ban. Don't think that we agree to it, etc., etc.
The initial guideline was issued by the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Central Consumer Protection Authority under the Consumer Protection Act, which said that restaurants cannot charge service charge as a mandatory charge from consumers. If somebody wants to pay, there is no prohibition. But the choice is of the consumer. This order has been challenged by the Restaurants Association in the High Court. So it is a challenge from the restaurants to the government order. And the High Court had stayed it. Now the restaurants are putting out an impression that the High Court has approved this. Therefore, you have to pay. The matter is still sub judice. And at the last hearing, what the judge said was, should we not, if you want to charge, should we not specify that it is a staff welfare charge or a staff welfare contribution? I have no objection to that. As long as it is optional for the consumer and it's not mandatory, that the bill should come only food plus GST. And the service charge, if any, can be added after talking to the consumer. And then the consumer decides how much he wants to pay. It cannot be put in the bill and the consumer confronted to say, no, you pay so much. This is what is happening now. And I think that is completely wrong. And the High Court should not allow a mandatory charge to be put on bills, which has no authority of law. Merely because somebody has gone to court, it doesn't mean that the citizens of India will have to pay more. It has no legislative backing. There is no rule that allows such a service charge to be mandatory. If it is in the nature of a tip, that I'm
Okay.
happy with the service, I'm willing to pay you 2%, 3%, 4%, or 5%, or even 10%. It's my choice. Leave it to
Correct.
me as the customer. You
Ah.
can't force me. So this is the issue before the High Court, and I do believe that the
Kishore
High Court will
Subramania,
look after
what?
the interest of the citizen. Thank you.
Okay, but Kishore Subramania, what right does a restaurant have to force any citizen in this country to pay a service charge? It's a service charge. Now, when we say service charge, it almost sounds like this is a tax that is going to the government of India, which it is not. It is simply going to the pockets of the restaurant. Now, if it's a service charge, I may or may not be happy with the service. If I'm happy with the service, I will give the standard 10%. If I'm not happy with the service, I will not pay anything and I'll walk away. Why on earth are restaurants and hotels in this country hell-bent on levying a service charge on its customers? It's not like they are cheap. It's not like when you go out to eat, you're getting anything for cheap. Everything in any case is so expensive.
Okay, so let me answer you this question. First of all, you need to understand that the restaurant or the eatery is not forcing you to pay. Now, since it's sub judice, let me be very cautious in what I am saying. The High Court has stayed this ban. Now, what does a stay on a ban mean? Which means the ban no longer is there. Now, does that mean it is open and you can actually charge? No. Does that mean that you cannot charge? You cannot charge. It doesn't mean it's very ambiguous. It's in the mid position now. Now, there is a further hearing which is coming up, and after that, answering your specific question, why should they charge? Now, please understand, India, or probably the whole globe, but India in particular is a very price-sensitive market. Now, let's say I'm going to a restaurant where a particular item costs me 100 rupees. The nearer restaurant or my competitor is not going to be able to charge 130 or 140 or 150 and still sell it because it's a price-sensitive market. So I will have to price my product in the competitive nature. At the same time, there are a lot of overheads which goes up. To run a restaurant, you need to understand it is not just the food cost. There are 100 types of overhead which goes up, which goes to electricity, which goes to interiors, which goes to service, which goes to labor, which goes to a lot of agencies, licensing. So the restaurant has a right, according to me, to actually levy a service charge. Now, whether the customer wants to pay or not, he can take a decision whether he wants to have food there or not. As long as the customer is intimated well in advance that our service charge protocols are 10%, 5%, 20%, whatever, I think it's a free trade practice. You want to eat in my restaurant, I charge you. If you want, if you're okay with it, fine.
But you're already charging me for the food.
Obviously,
you're already charging me for the food. The dosa I eat, the 200 rupee dosa I eat, I'm not just paying for the dosa, I'm paying for the AC, I'm paying for sitting in a nice environment, etc., etc. Then why burden me with another service charge? Why burden me with more expenses? Now, you're saying the restaurant has every right to do so, and if someone doesn't want to pay service charge, don't eat at that restaurant. Well, that's fair as well, but you know what happens usually? And my problem is that no one asks you whether a service charge can be levied or not. Quietly, it comes to you in your bill, and usually you just pay up. You don't argue, you just pay up. That's what my problem is. You almost, when you put it in the bill, you're telling the consumer it's mandatory for you to pay it, when it is not. You know, I have one caller. I'm afraid I just have absolutely no time on this show, but I can take one citizen voice. Abhinav has been waiting for us for a bit now. He's calling us from Anand. Abhinav, please go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening, panelists. I would just like to point out that restaurants associations, or as a matter of fact hotels, they don't have any moral ground as per the Constitution of India to levy service charge, because that is the right of the government, that is whether the central or the state. And just to quote my personal experience, sometime back I had accompanied my son to a very popular restaurant locally in the town, and after having a meal, since I was accompanying my guests as well, so the bill was handed over to us, and it contained the service charge, as you rightly pointed out, in a very hidden manner. So when we asked them that is it mandatory for us to pay, because as per the court's ruling, it is not. So they countered me by stating that what proof do you have that there is such kind of a ruling passed by the court? You have sat here. You have occupied our chairs. You have taken the advantage of the cool air of the AC, so it is a must for you to pay the charge. So I would not like to say that we were hounded, but yes, there was a quarrel, there was an altercation, and it was a very messy scene. So more clarity needs to be brought on this issue.
So the point, Abhinav, I think you're making is that the Delhi High Court stay on the ban is being misused by hotels and restaurants across the country. Our consumers need to know, anyone who's watching this broadcast needs to know that there will be a service charge that is put on your bill when you go out to eat. It is not mandatory for you to pay. If you want to pay, you're happy with the first service, go ahead, pay it. If you don't want to, you are in an absolutely constitutionally right position to ask the hotel or the restaurant to scrap that part from the bill. We leave it there for the moment. Professor Khanna, thank you very much for joining us. Kishore Subramanian, thank you very much for joining us as well. With that, I'm slipping into a quick break on the show. Up next, my colleague Afrida is joining you with all the top headlines at the top of 7. Do stay with Mirror now.